tendency continues to operate. Now, this was one of the probably most remarkable insights of Karl Marx, that capitalism is continuously a dialectic of valorization and devalorization. In commonsensical English language, you can put it as it's continuously a dialectic of absorbing people into productive circuits and throwing them out of the productive circuit. Right? So labor absorption versus labor repulsion. Right? Again, one of his remarkable sentences from Capital is, generals win by recruiting armies, capitalists win by retrenching their army of labor. That becomes the most powerful tool by which they compete with each other. Right? This endless technological progress, which has its advantages, but it also has its obvious downside. And why do they compete in terms of technology? Precisely because it gives them greater power in terms of appropriation of surplus labor. Right? Now, if that happens, where are we headed? Right? So, what I'm trying to finally close my conversation with you now, it is that unless we address the challenges of the economic policy regime, right? Economic policy regime which is firmly in place now, sort of in this country, and the current government at the center is many times more neoliberal than the regime that we had only about 10 months ago. Right? If you look at its last budget, look at what it has done, for instance, to the social sector. The excuse is that social sector in any case state should have been doing, education, health, etc. And what the union government did itself was a mistake. It should not have intervened so much. As per our constitution, it is the subject of the state government. It is only from mid-1970s that the center got more and more involved in education, health, and so on. Right? So he said, look, we will transfer through the recommendations of the Finance Commission, 14th Finance Commission, more untied fund to the states now, right? And then the state should be taking care of all this, which is a complete hogwash. If you look at the total transfers, and not only transfer under the 14th Finance recommendation, of the total union transfer as a proportion of GDP, it will come down from 6.2% to 5.9%. So what is the argument being made all the time? That, look, we have given them more resources now. Right? So they should be complaining, the state should not be complaining. Which is, as I shared with you, is not true, because normal central assistance and a whole lot of other things have been simply either slashed or cut down or squeezed and so on. Right? So total transfers have declined. And on the argument that we have given them more, they are saying, alright, so why bother about union government running National Rural Health Mission? Why should union government bother about Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan? Under school education itself, the budget has come down from 54,000, almost 55,000 crores to 40,000 crores. Right? If you look at women and children, budgets under that, from roughly 20,000 crores to about 9,000 crores. Right? Now, at the end of it, what do? We never took our education with the kind of seriousness that we should have. We created a massive population of, all those vulnerable citizens who are nowhere. Right? In terms of getting included into any circuits which can be considered respectable, decent, and so on, overwhelming majority of, yesterday's children who subsequently become adults, etc., were simply marginalized. Right? And what are we doing today? To probably are making it much worse. What happens then? They become cannon fodders for all those who can use them either for terrorism in Kashmir or what happened in this particular state some time ago, right? Or the Naxalite movement, right? So either they would become easily incited, right, and become cannon fodders for them, or they can be, of course, organized by progressive forces which then can turn the tide. Now, unfortunately, the second is not happening in any adequate measure. If we look around ourselves, progressive forces are, in fact, on the back foot. Their backs are against the wall, right? In such a context, now it is indeed frightening. I mean, when I look at India's future 10 years down the road, right? Now all these conflicts, all these sort of, things that you were talking about, you were talking in terms of two countries, but I'm saying this is something which will first and foremost hit this particular country, and then along with that, it will hit the region. Right? I remember somebody was talking about Kargil war, and that day I was traveling somewhere in Bihar, and people were being recruited. Right? There were some 30,000 young men who had come to a BSF recruiting center where people were to be recruited. You actually could count their bones. People who were running to try to be recruited, they had to run bare-chested. And I was just standing there, and most of them were malnourished, if not famished, right? And this was for them their last hope that something will happen, right? And that whole jingoism that goes with it, right? Jingoism which happens within the country. Shiv Sena is a very good example of what it does in Maharashtra, right? And not only Shiv Sena, look at mainstream politicians like Sheila Dikshit. You will recall her statement to the press that all these Biharis and UPIs have messed up with Delhi. Right? She made this statement not once, but on 3 different occasions. Right? And of course, every time she backtracked, she sort of said, no, I didn't mean this. Press as always has reported me wrongly and so on and so forth. So you have then perforce to identify the enemy as the other. Whether it comes from some other gender, some other state, some other language. And just look at what happened to Northeasterns in Karnataka. The way they got bashed up last year. Right? On 3 days, there were special trains which have been run to evacuate our citizens from our country. Right? Now, these are the sort of tendencies, and hence, doing political dialogue, doing all those cultural contacts, all that is very good. I have high regard for all such initiatives. But where is the economy? Yeah. Where is the larger architecture of economic policy? And if we do not address those, let me assure you, we are in deep, deep trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jha, for such a wonderful lecture. Now I request Professor Jagrup Singh to give his presidential remarks of this lecture session.
Dr. Kumar, I think these two addresses, lectures given by Professor Upadhyay and Professor Praveen Jha, both have raised very pertinent issues, which I think concerns not only to us but to this region also. Professor Jha's Professor Upadhyay is guest of honors address on particularly on the Afghanistan issue. We see that Afghanistan made, I don't know whether I should go to the bone of contention in this South and Southwest Asia. We've seen that the issue which we've talked, particularly of the Kashmir, India, Pakistan, or India, Afghanistan relations. The whole process of this, what we call as the Kashmir issue, we can see there since 1989. You can see its relationship with the Soviet withdrawal from the Afghanistan in the 90s, and then the moving of those all forces from Afghanistan to this part of the country. Need to go beyond that, who created that issue of Afghanistan and who created the forces which basically created this type of terrorism over here. Again, the same forces which we see that they have left over Afghanistan as an unfinished agenda. We've seen that the intervention of particularly of the United States of America, which came over there in 1979-80 when Soviet forces came over there and created a system and a structure, particularly of the Pakistan as a frontline state. The way Pakistan was supported, both in terms of politically as well as in terms of what we call it militarily, and the whole process of Islamization. I think we need to understand that what has happened during the Zion regime over here and the Reagan in the United States of America and the developments over there, and bringing the great basically freedom fighters named Osama bin Laden, and the way ultimately Osama bin Laden played not only havoc in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, and India also. The point here is which is this, that what type of access is coming up over there. A vacuum is there, and Pakistan is trying to fill the vacuum. But we know that there is no consensus. If we read the history of the Afghanistan, they themselves are not very basically factions are there fighting with each other. The land of state, very basically geographically or location-wise, very important. On the one side you have the Central Asian countries, then you have Iran is there, then Iraq is there, then Pakistan is there. You will see that geostrategic location of these countries and the sources over there, and the struggle to basically control these areas in the region, not only for political purposes but economic purposes also, I think will continue to have its impact over there. Stability in Afghanistan is in the interest of the country, not only in the interest of India but in the South Asia. We basically brought Afghanistan into the domain of the SARC, but we see that SARC and the way the SARC remained almost what we can say is that not very much functional, not very much successful. Conflicts are there, structural problems are there. I think the issue which Professor Upadhyaya has raised that we must be very basically cautious on that issue. If this problem goes on, we know that both the countries, India and the Pakistan, they are the nuclear states now, and the forces, particularly of the fundamental, as Professor Jha has said, that the rise of the fanatic, rise of the fundamental forces, and both the countries, ultimately all these leads to have a different type of agendas, where the people's agenda, I think, gets marginalized. So this becomes basically the responsibility, again coming to that, the responsibility of the people, particularly in case of India. India's role is very much there, but particularly while resolving the India-Pakistan relationship, I think, this is my personal opinion, India must play a role of a big brother. Because it's not always we see from that angle. So there is some responsibility of a big brother. I don't think if India gives some space, or India basically shows its a large heart, Pakistan should not, policy should not be Pakistan-centered. I personally think in that way also. Or we must take into account a peaceful way upon there, but the very condition, the very situation, or the political situation in the country, we're facing that. Instead of talking about the common issues, instead of talking about the issues which are related to the people, the big issues particularly where this type of situations are being raised. So I think let's see that what happens in India, and as Professor Upadhyaya has said, I think not much need to worry. We have the structure like that. It's an expansionist state in that way. It's a capitalist state in that way. There's not a problem from the outside, but the problem which Professor Praveen Jha has basically very comprehensively explained about the whole development process, particularly of the development of the capital and the development of the finance capital, not at the global level, but at the country as it is in India. I think the very basically the behavior of that finance and the capital and the development process seems to be that growth is very much there, but where is the development? Where comes the interest of the people? It talks about that there are two countries where the growth rate is very high. But we have seen that we have the growth, but where is that basically employment? Where is distribution of the sources? Only those issues are being basically squeezed, which are directly concerned with the people. I think the whole process, but maybe this is the character of this capitalist path of development or the flow of the capital is there. Ultimately, he has pointed out, he has given the solution of that. The solution lies with the people. And the solution lies with the people, particularly where the people issues are central. When we talk about the people, it's the people belonging to all classes, all categories, and all groups are there. So there's a need to create a situation by mobilizing the people, and this pressure must come from the below. I think again there is a responsibility of the class to which we belong, that we have this responsibility to create that situation, or to create that condition to mobilize people for the positive purpose. And as rightly said, we have seen Punjab basically, talk about the Punjab, we have seen that in the Indo-Pakistan conflicts, Punjab is one of the few states that suffered the most, starting from 1947, 48, in all the wars. And later on, any events which took place in India, let's say for example, just one example, there was attack on the Indian Parliament. Forces were stationed over there, and more than a few thousand villages were asked to vacate their houses and to move safer places for more than 1.5 years over there. Whenever any incident takes place, maybe in case of China, we have some basically information about that when there was a war in 1962, India-China war. The few villages on the Indo-Pakistan border, basically, they suffered a lot because the Pakistan later involved in that. So my point is that ultimately the solution lies with that. There is a need to have a very strong people's movement which must come from the below, and the need of the hour is that the academician's role is very much there. We know the politicians are of all shades. It may be different in case of India, but what we have seen in case of Punjab, they all belong to the same class, and the same class, so we don't expect much from them. So I think this is the character of the ruling class over there. We see that there is no much difference in terms of its economic policy, in terms of foreign policy, in terms of domestic policy. Even if there is a Congress is there, BJP is there, NDA is there, UP is there. So ultimately, this is a people's problem, the people issue, and the solution must come from the people. So with this line, I am thankful to Pastor Purandar Singh Tiwana for giving me opportunity, and all organizers, and to very learned scholars, Professor Badaya and Professor Praveen Chaji, for this very straightforward and enlightening lecture. And also thankful to the audience for a patient hearing of these two lectures. Thank you very much.
Now I request Dr. Tiwana to present a set of books to Dr. Jagrup Singh. To our respected guests on this dais, I am very much thankful to Dr. Jagrup Singh for presiding over this session. I am very thankful to Professor V. Upadhyay, who is our guest of honor, and for sharing his views. I am also thankful to Professor Praveen Jha for such a wonderful address and such an insightful discussion on this critical issue of Indo-Pak relations.